A lot, to me, is in the teaching. It's about teachers recognizing that their job is not to teach subjects, it's to teach children. And that the great gift of a teacher is to energize the imagination of the learners around them. I was talking recently, to a French teacher, and she said she was teaching my daughter. Somebody, actually a very good professor called Louis Arnaud Reed, who was a professor of aesthetics, years ago made a distinction between the task and the achievement senses of verbs. What I mean is you can be engaged in the activity, but without actually achieving the result. So you might say of somebody, like, where's Deirdre? And you say, well, she's teaching at the moment. But there may be no actual teaching going on, no actual learning. She's engaged in the activity, in the task, but not the achievement sense. And my daughter's French teacher spent most of her life engaged in the task of teaching and achieving very little of it. And I remember going along to see her because she thought that Kate wasn't doing well in school in French. And I said, what do you think the problem is? And she said, I think it's her attitude. Well, Kate doesn't have attitude, not in the way that she meant. She's smart and beautiful, and it's genetic. What can I tell you? I mean, you'll meet my wife at some point, but she just found that there were 5 kids in the class. And so I said to, and none of them were finding it interesting. So I said to this teacher, you think it's Kate's attitude, what do you mean by that? She said, well, she seems bored all the time. So I said, do you have any theories about this? And she said, how do you mean? I said, well, could it be boring? I'm just putting it out there as a possible hypothesis, And I thought it was plausible because I'd been talking to her for 5 minutes and I was stultified, And she said, well, I think we have to accept that some aspects of learning a language are just boring. Well, you see, I don't accept that. I don't think anything is naturally boring. And certainly not learning a language, not necessarily boring. I mean, I don't think French is inherently boring in some respects, do you? I mean, I don't think there are legions of French teenagers giving up on the language, at the age of 13 because it's so tedious and speaking Danish instead because it's more interesting. Of course not. No, I thought you are boring. This is the situation. And you shouldn't be teaching. Because, being a teacher obviously involves that you have an understanding of your discipline. Of course it involves that. But that's only ever half the job. It worries me that there's this idea that as long as you've got a degree in your subject, you can be let loose on the nation's children. And the truth of it is that being a teacher is only partly being an expert in your field. A much greater part of being a teacher is knowing how to engage people's interests and imaginations. And this isn't about simply trying to transmit to them information you happen to have in your head. It's finding ways of it being engaging to them, finding the point of connection with them. And I know people who can make potentially the most extraordinarily dull stuff fascinating, and other people who could take the most interesting topic on the world and have you wanting to, you lose the will to live after 5 minutes. And that's why I believe that the future of education is not about coming up with fancier curricular statements or more effective forms of testing. All that can be helpful. The whole future of education is about the quality of teaching. There isn't a school anywhere that's better than the teachers. There isn't a school anywhere that's better than the head teacher.